That's the thing about Joseph Fares's full cock vision. Sometimes
Yeah, where
it's
is it here?
it's not full cock.
It's
Tony,
not. Oh
I was
no.
playing it Taste 2 the entire time. I was looking out for it. It just didn't
You're
appear, I'm
waiting.
afraid.
You
It
thought
what
at the end, like, it'd get a
I
cock
thought.
out.
You know, one of my favorite parts of It Takes Two is there's two Easter eggs in it. One of them is that um, there's there's like action figures versions of the Way Out characters,
That's cool.
and they have like their dialogue from the game, and it's like, Leo, you beep, an idiot. What the beep are you doing? Like they have like their dialogue from the game in it, and then also
That's pretty cool.
there's a mission where you're in space and you can scan for signals on a radar, and if you I was like, I wonder what happens if I just keep scanning for signals, and if you keep scanning for signals, you can find like other characters in the game talking, and if you keep scanning, you can find the Joseph Sparrow's "fuck the Oscars" speech in the game.
Okay.
It's called. You're
Fuck
gonna
the Oscars.
fuck the Oscars, man. Fuck, you know what? Fuck EA, but fuck the Oscars, man. I fucking love Joseph Fares. There's an achievement for it called Fares Frequency. Um,
Okay. That is
so
pretty. It's cool. It's cool to have like funny Easter eggs, right?
um, yeah, that's a really cool. I really appreciate that as a fan of Joseph Fares's previous work.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, um, I think I haven't played Brother: A Tale of Two Sons, but I've heard it's very good. But that's very much a sort of single player game. I played A Way Out, and although I heard mixed things about it, I generally enjoyed my experience playing the
Okay.
game, and I did think it had its flaws.
So wait, so is
Um,
it? So yeah, it's a general consensus. Like, it's like some people think they like it, some people don't like it. Though.
yeah, I would say so. I think
Okay,
some people are going to
I
get
did
a
not
lot out
realize
of it,
that.
and then what did you think?
I
What,
no,
what
I
did
just
you,
not heard anything. Like, I've only heard like I
I
think
think
I've pretty
it's
much like only heard like you talk about it. Like, I've not heard anything negative about
I
it. You
think
know.
generally it's quite a it's quite a good experience, but it's so heavily story based that it's pretty much mostly story with very little gameplay.
Oh, okay.
Whereas It Takes Two is a heavy story game, but it's never at the compromise of the gameplay. I will say this right out the
Right.
bat. It Takes Two, it feels like Joseph Fares, he's taken his ideas and he's finally made like an amazing game. This game
Right. Right.
is so fucking good. It's not just the best Joseph Fares game. It's not just the best co-op game of this year. I think it's the best co-op game I've ever played. I think
Really?
I
Wow.
think fundamentally you could sit down and play It Takes Two with any person on the earth and you would have an amazing experience with anyone. It is so well designed that there is never a point where you are someone is doing something by themselves where it feels like you're watching them play. There's never a point where it feels like, oh, I can't do this because, I'm not good at I'm not amazing at platforming or I'm not very good at this. The game is constantly morphing and switching. The game's way longer than I thought it was going to be as well. At one point, a lot of the game is platforming, but like at one point, I thought I was playing fucking Magica, Tony. There's a point where the game's
Oh,
like
right.
Magica.
Okay.
There's points where you're like, you know, it's like a third person shooter. There's parts where it just keeps going. Like, literally, I was like, oh, we must be near the end of the game. And it just keeps going. And the entire time, I'm not thinking, hey, when does this game end? Because I'm bored. I'm thinking, man, this is really fucking fun. But I just assumed it would end by now because the amount of effort you would have to keep putting in to
Yeah.
make this level of quality and just keep it consistently would be insane. But they somehow did it. It's crazy. I think, like I said to you in the previous one, playing through like the original Bioshock, that's like a 12-hour experience. This game took me about like 12 hours to complete. Like
Really? Wow.
it's
Okay.
a full game.
I
Complete.
would honestly have thought this would be like 4 or 5 hours at
Yes,
max.
that's
Like,
what I
just like from
thought.
the marketing.
That's what I thought when I got the game. I was like, okay, it looks like they've given the amazing creative mind Joseph Fares a huge budget. It's probably
Wait.
going to be like front loaded
Yeah.
2 to 4 hours of like very good content and then maybe pad it out. No, it's like 100% the entire way through. It is
One thing I
so
just want to
good.
quickly say is like one thing I'm already seeing, right, is that instead of like stopping the gameplay, like they just like you just like hear like the characters like
Yeah,
communicate with each other. Like that's
yeah.
like modern games have been missing that. Like they just love just like stopping you to talk about stuff instead of like
There is a
as
lot
you're
of
doing
there
stuff.
is a lot of cutscenes, but they do still get
Yeah.
a lot of story in as you play, sort of thing. So if you don't know what It Takes Two is, basically the story is there is a young girl with her two parents, and she finds out that her parents are getting a divorce, and the young girl is very upset, and she's been reading this book about love, and her magical tears turn the parents into a clay doll and a wooden doll, and the entire thing you're trying to do is you're trying to get back to your original state and your original bodies. But Dr. Hakim, the Book of Love, he's got another idea for you and your relationship. It's a pretty, like, I would say, cliched story, but I still really enjoyed the story, I would say, overall. I mean, it's the whole like parent trap story on crack, where you're
Yeah.
literally forced into these weird, bizarre worlds. Like, I was like, okay, it's gonna be like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You'll just be running around your house, but no, there's like
They've gone ham on like the idea of like using this like the stuff around already. Like, what I've seen
this
in
is
this
the
video.
vacuum cleaner that you never fix, and now he's angry at you, and then he becomes a boss fight. There is lots of boss fights in this game as well, and they're really
Okay,
fucking
interesting
cool.
boss fights.
Yep. And it's not like unfair where if you're playing with someone who's not like, say if I was playing with someone who wasn't very good at gaming, I play with my dad, right? The game's set up in a way where as long as one of you's alive, the other person can res. So if you have someone who's not as good as games as you, or in this particular genre of games, you can sort of carry somebody else slightly through the game. It's very accessible, this game, which is why I say I think you can play it with anyone, sort of thing. Like
Yeah,
I would be like to my brother if he wanted to play. I was like, if he was like, I want to play a co-op game with my wife, I was like, play It Takes Two. It is
yeah.
fantastic. It is so good. And you know what, Tony? Only one person needs to own the game. That's what's insane to me.
The classic.
One person needs to
What
buy
he
this
does that every
game.
time, right?
Yeah, he did. Well, he did it for It Takes Two, and A Way Out. But what was I going to say? Yeah, only one person has to own the game, and guess what? It's just been added to EA Play as well.
Right.
So I subscribed to EA Play to play A Way Out with my friend, and if one of you subscribes to EA Play, you can even subscribe to EA Play through Steam for a month, which will cost you like £4. You could play It Takes Two for £4. Like, it's insane to me how like good a deal it is, considering how high quality it was. Like I was saying, like there's sections where you're in like a snow area. There's sections where you're like riding on frogs through a forest. There's sections where you're inside like a giant mechanical clock. Like, the art budget is insane. Like, I went and I looked at the attention to detail, and there's so much small detail on every single thing in this game. And you look at it and you go, okay, it must be this one area that has this much detail in it. I shit you not, Tony. When I looked at everything, everything has insane detail to it. It's crazy how much work went into this game. I genuinely think this may be one of my favorite games of the year. It is so well made, so well produced, excellent ideas, fun to play for everybody in the world, and
Even like
it's
the
just
animations are
so
like
yes,
fantastic.
yes. I love the running animation of the character I'm playing as, Cody. He has this
I
great
like
running animation where he just puts his
yeah,
arms
yeah.
behind his back and just sort of runs like an idiot.
I like the really like playful like jump, the double jump. It looks fantastic.
There's a double jump and a dash, which I always love
Right.
in platformers when they give you the ability to recover with a double jump. That's a great accessibility feature for a platformer. Giving someone a double jump will help them recover from a bad
Oh my
jump,
god.
which helps players who, sometimes don't necessarily have, pixel perfect jumps.
Yeah.
Or, the dash will help them as well, and it's brought into the gameplay as well. So, and as I said before, like, playing as each character completely changes the game. Like, it's not like you sort of do the same thing as each character. There were sections where I was like, oh, playing as Cody is really cool. And there were sections where I was like, oh, I wish I was playing as May, because May's having a completely different experience to me. Like, I would...
Oh, right. So there are actually differences then, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I would be willing to play this game again as the other character, because it's almost like a completely different experience playing as the other character, sort of thing. Which,
okay, that's cool. That's really cool.
and it's constantly switching up what you're doing. Sometimes you'll be assisting your friend more heavily. Sometimes they'll be assisting you more heavily. Like, it's constantly switching it up, and it keeps going and going and going. And I was like, man, I've been playing this game for so long. It can't keep going. It can't keep switching up. It can't keep striking gold. And it just never stops. It just never stops being fantastic. I can't sing this game's praises high enough. It's just so good. I think for a long time, the thing with Joseph Fares has been he's had such fantastic ideas, great stories, great, moments in games, right? But it's just, there's always been something lacking, And I think...
they always just, give up one for another experience.
It Takes Two has zero compromises, and it shows. It is just fantastic around the board. It is so good. I wouldn't be surprised if this game just flat out wins a lot of the Game of the Year awards.
Oh yeah, you'd hope so. If his other games have, so. I don't see why this wouldn't.
I think it's nominated in the Jeff Keighley Big Game Awards. It makes me almost sad, Tony, the current state of games that came out this year, because I feel like even in a year where there were better games coming out, I think It Takes Two could easily beat a lot of the really good games. And I don't want people to go back in history and go, oh, It Takes Two won in 2021 because there was no competition. No, there's competition, and even if there was more competition, I think It Takes Two would probably still win. It's that good of a game. I was having... Oh, one thing to point out. This has got nothing to do with the game. This is 100% on me. My Xbox 360 controller was dying. So if you see controller disconnected, that was my dying
this was
Xbox 360 controller I was playing on.
This was pre-Elite controller too.
Yes. I literally was like, okay, I'm fucking pissed off playing It Takes Two, because it was happening in Rocket League, It Takes Two, The Outer Wilds as well. It was happening on that as well. So I was like, I need to get a new controller because mine's broken.
Makes sense. I mean, yeah, I can see so external thing ruining a fantastic game would be incredibly annoying.
You know how I was talking about Bioshock Infinite is like a roller coaster, and sometimes that's a bad thing? It Takes Two is like a roller coaster that you never want to get off, and is still more open. It just keeps bam, 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 keeps going, but it's really good
experience. But yeah.
It's so good. Oh my god. Okay. This is one thing. I'm going to say this, and this is going to make zero sense to you. Can I tell you a spoiler that's not a spoiler because it's one sentence and it will not make sense to you?
Alright, go on.
The elephant deserved better. I cannot... Yes. Yeah, okay. Okay. The thing I love about It Takes Two is it almost has that Simpsons quality to it, where with The Simpsons, kids love it because, kids could play It Takes Two. But there's moments in It Takes Two where I'm watching this where I'm playing it as an adult, and I'm like, holy shit, this is so weirdly dark for a game that kids could be playing, but to them it would probably be funny, but to me I'm like, this is fucking horrifying what we are doing right now, and we're gonna have to live the rest of our lives knowing we did this. It's the game has this great sense of humor. It's fucking hilarious. I love the writing. I think it's fantastic.
The writing's always good.
That's always been a massive strength for Joseph Fares, but it's the writing doesn't come at the expense of gameplay at this one, and it just shows. It's amazing. I'm gonna be gushing over this because I have so many nice things to say about it.
In the content we've seen, right? Other than the cutscenes, you've not stopped moving. You're doing different things. You die. When one of you dies, you very quickly respawn behind like it's like not like cheating the checkpoint where like puts you in front of what you're trying
Yeah.
to do. Like you have to do it actually properly, but it doesn't like slow you down in any way. Like it's
There's
already
like
it's good
oh,
gameplay without like any of the story.
there's frequent checkpoints. You're never bored. You're never punished for being like, too bad or
Yeah,
anything
look
like
how quick
that.
that was. That's insane.
Yep. Back in the game. Like, so I'm playing. So to point out, I'm playing my friend Vietnam Dave. He's not a huge fan of platformers, but I think even he would say he had a lot of fun playing this, even though it has like heavy platforming sections. Like, the game's not like, oh, you died once, both of you now die and have to restart the entire level again.
Yeah, which
Sort
is
of
always
thing.
frustrating.
There's a lot of like Portal 2-esque trust exercises in It Takes Two as well, I would say. Where
Yeah.
you have to be like, okay,
Well,
you have the ability to kill me now. Please don't do it.
Did you or did Dave kill you like in the crushing thing? I
Oh,
can't remember who
I
did what
crushed
now.
Dave, definitely.
Okay. So this is
It
now
was,
payback for that, I
yeah, it
guess.
was a trust exercise. Um,
But at the same time, you can do funny things with it when it's so quick to respawn. Like it's not too
yeah,
punishing,
yep.
so you can get away with funny things like that.
No, I have to let Dave over. It's my time to take revenge. No, I'm just kidding. Like, so people have been talking about the idea of a AAA game, and it's lost all of
Yeah.
its meaning because we've had so many AAA
When
games.
you make shit, yeah.
So many AAA games like the GTA Remastered, Battlefield 2042, Cyberpunk. These are meant to be AAA games. If the original definition of a AAA game is still true, It Takes Two is a AAA game. It is.
Yeah, I agree.
It is amazing.
That's the other thing about AAA game as well that I think publishers seem to not understand. It's like it doesn't actually matter what genre it is.
Also, something to mention. The entire game has optional minigames throughout it that you can discover and find, and then once you discover them, you can go back and play them. It has like little scoreboards between you and your partner. You can go back and replay them.
Right.
So there's like, you'll be playing like shooting galleries against your friend. You can play, like a game of bowls on an ice hockey rink against your friend. You can play a game of chess against your friend. There is so much variety in this game. It's insane. Like, it's so good. And I need to stop talking because this game...
Go and buy it on sale or full price, I guess, is kind of what we're saying.
My advice is, if you're looking at this and going, buying one copy of this to play with my friend is too expensive, subscribe to EA Play and play it, please.
Yeah, that's fair. To be fair, like, for me personally, this is one of the games like I think I would want to like buy.
I own this game. After seeing like
I can want to play
initial...
it multiple times in my life.
So I plan on playing it with someone else at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe wait a little while, but I want to play as May and play some of the stuff I already experienced from them and give the experience of one of my other friends. So, and I can because I own the game, so I can just I can download the Friends Pass on Steam, and then we can play together. Yeah. Probably my favorite co-op game of all time. Can you think of like another co-op game where you're like, this is one of the best co-op games of all time? Because I would have to think.
No,
about it.
I feel like Portal 2 co-op is like the last one. Like I think I looked at it. Oh, this
yes.
is really fun.
Okay, Portal 2.
But
and Left 4 Dead 2.
I think this is much better. Even that.
I think probably the best ones I can think of right now would probably be like Portal 2 and Left 4 Dead 2. Probably some of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I think this is just so good. Let's talk about something equally as amazing, but completely different tone. Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye. If you have not played Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye, or The Outer Wilds, please leave now. I should probably preface it by saying this will be spoilers for Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye, and probably spoilers for the main game as well.
I haven't played it, so I've been technically spoiled by just watching Joe play, but I acknowledged this and went in anyway, so that's why I'm still here.
I spoiled the first game at your request anyway, so...
Yes.
And I needed to talk to somebody about this because I said this in my Outer Wilds spoiler review. I said, like, as soon as you play it, every time you play it and you do a loop, you walk away from the computer and I just start thinking. It's a game that makes you think like emotionally. It starts making you think like mechanically, like what you're going to do on the
Yeah.
net. Like, ah, it's so good. And like the fact that they've released an entire DLC that could be its own like standalone game almost is just insane to me that they've been work. I watched a podcast that Danny Adair from NoClip did, and they did a spoiler cast on the Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye with the developers, and basically
Right.
they said that an invisible planet like the Eye was basically a Kickstarter goal back when it was on Kickstarter. So they've had the idea for this since like it was on Kickstarter, but it was like nowhere near in this form. The original
Right.
idea, which
Okay.
I think you would find pretty cool, is originally the idea was it was going to be basically a giant flat disc world, and then at
Okay.
nighttime the disc world would rotate and you would go to the other side of the disc.
That is pretty cool.
And
Okay.
there was an
This is cool as well, though.
the idea was that there would be this raft you would go on, and you would go across this giant swamp of water, and there would be a giant monster in the water that you would discover,
Okay.
which would basically. So if you don't know, Our Worlds Echoes of the Eye, um, I think the game's always had a theme, and the theme of this DLC they wanted to. They basically even said they wanted to try the theme of horror. They really like the idea of making creepy stuff, and that's why Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye comes with a reduced frights option, because there is a lot of stuff that is like very creepy and dark.
Right. So you can turn it off and still enjoy it, I guess. Yeah.
So
I don't know. I like the creepy stuff, so like it's kind
mm,
of wouldn't even consider turning it off, to be honest.
I wouldn't
But
consider turning it
kind of understand
personally,
it.
but I can see if people would want to.
Yeah.
So the way this starts is it exists in the same time frame of the main game. So you have 22 minutes, and basically the way you start the new DLC is you go to a new exhibit at the Harthian Museum, and it talks about basically they've been taking photos of the sun, and every so often on the photos there's like something blocking the sun that they can't see. It's creating a shadow because
Right.
it's blocking the light,
Yeah.
but they don't understand what it could be. So you discover basically this invisible, cloaked, like small, like sort of small halo planet ring called the Stranger, which I'm in now. And it basically, I guess we've already done spoilers. So as you discover through playing it, it's it's a recreation of an alien race's home planet. So the way the story's told through this one is in the Outer Wilds base game. The story is told through text. You have a universal scanner for the Nomai, and basically you read their conversations with each other non-linearly, in a non-linear way. And basically
Yeah.
they said they wanted to do the storytelling through pictures, through slideshows, but it would be way too confusing if they did it non-linear. So they decided
Yeah.
to do it linear this time, but they wanted to give you the mechanic of physically turning the slides, so you could go back and look at stuff you'd missed. Here's the artifact. It's pretty important to the story, so there's these creatures. They don't have official names. They wouldn't give an official name for them on the Spoilercast podcast. They just said whatever people want to call them. We don't want to give them an official name. People have called them basically the inhabitants, as they inhabit this planet.
Right. Okay.
So kind of need to understand the main story of the Outer Wilds, because it's kind of tied into that. Because if someone were to say to me, "Hey, I'm going to play the Outer Wilds. Should I play the DLC before or after?" I would say definitely play it afterwards. But basically, these like owl deer creatures, they had a planet, and they got a call from an eye millions of years ago, before like you existed, or before the Nomai discovered about the eye sending out a message, and they heard the call. They went to go worship it. So in order to get to the eye, they built this giant spaceship. But in order to build this giant spaceship, they had to destroy their own world. And then when they got to the eye, they realized the eye was going to destroy the universe and create a new one, which is sort of a big theme of the original Outer Wilds, is the theme of accepting death to create new life. It's sort of a huge
Yeah.
theme of the original Outer Wilds, because your character is very much like, okay, I'm going to end this infinite loop and I'm going to create new life finally by allowing the eye to restart the universe.
Yeah.
Um, but that's the Herthian reaction to the eye. The Nomai's reaction as well is to get to the eye and learn more about it. The inhabitants' reaction to the eye is okay. There's creepy photos around, by the way, and I'll talk about it later because that's kind of funny. What I realized about that. They got to the eye, they started worshipping it because you see buildings that have been burnt down that were like worshipping the eye. Again, environmental storytelling, fucking
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. They started worshipping the eye, and then once the eye, this race has a technology that allows them to share knowledge through scanning each other. So they scanned the eye, and they learnt the eye was going to destroy the universe and start another one, and it scared the fuck out of them because they didn't want to die. So they come all this way, destroyed their home planet, and all they had was this Halo ring approximation of what their planet was. They were
Right.
very upset. It fucking destroys them. They start crying, like they're so distraught. Um, but then they realize that they can recreate their own planet in this dream. They find this technology that allows them to simulate their own planet in like a dreamlike state. And as long as they have these artifacts and they have like these fires lit, they can stay infinitely in the dream. And kind of your goal, I would say, in this DLC is basically when you I'm gonna have to because you don't discover all this information linearly. Linear? I'm just gonna say linear because I'm getting. You don't discover this information linear, so it's kind of like interesting to do it linear, but you'll discover it in different ways. So it's interesting how I tell this story because a lot of the stuff I just said you won't realize until the end. Which is like what makes this game so fucking interesting is you can have a
Yeah.
completely different experience playing this game than I
You're
did.
you're you're kind of like a time detective, like piecing together like kind of like an archaeologist in a way, in a
You're
weird
yes,
weird way.
you are a you are a archaeologist, time detective, caught in a loop, trying to figure
Yeah.
out. You have infinite time because you're in a time loop, so you keep getting resurrected. But the thing is, certain mechanics you have to start them at a certain time. So in the base game, you have
You have
like
to go back and do it.
the twin planets, and the twin planets. One of the twin planets starts flooding full of sand, and you can't get into it after a certain time. And then the other one has the sand comes off it, so you need to go there at a certain time. This like spaceship also has stuff like that. You have what's called the dam. Um, so the inhabitants know the sun's gonna go supernova. So you remember like I was streaming this to you at some point, and it was like it was
Yeah.
blinking, flashing, saying there was something going wrong. That was saying
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they knew the sun was about to go supernova, and the spaceship is designed in a way where as soon as the supernova happens, um, the outsider it completely flies away outside the reach of the supernova, so they wouldn't die.
Right.
Um, okay. And they did this so that they could survive the end of the universe, sort of thing, when the supernova went off, and to stop anyone getting to the eye, sort of thing. You are still tied to the Twin Ash project from the first game. So whenever
Right.
the Twin Ash project is hit by the supernova, that gets that resets your loop, even though you technically would be out of range of the supernova, which is why you still are in the 22-minute loop. There is some
Yeah,
really
okay.
interesting new end games though, because you can take the the ATP core out of the Twin Ash project, which stops you from getting resurrected by it. And then you just stay inside of the spaceship as it flies away, and then you just exist there infinitely. Because
Right.
you're no longer
Okay.
being resurrected by the Twin Ash project, and then you're also no longer in range of the supernova. So that there's a new end game state there where you're just infinitely stuck inside the stranger spaceship. It has like a line of dialogue about I hope there's something edible on this like spaceship. But yeah, there's new like interesting end game scenario. Like they thought about that stuff. Like it's designed to work with the base game as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's all. I guess it's all tied together then.
Basically, you learn about this dream simulation where all of the inhabitants have their physical bodies have died, but they're still alive in the dream. Because I went into the, I think there's so much I want to say, but I need to think about it and try and put it out in some sort of order. There's so many moments in the Outer Wilds where you're like, they're like mind blowing moments, moments where you're like, holy shit. And I think like there's several points in the Echoes of the Eye where you're like, I think one of them was the moment you realize that you can enter the dream by sleeping with an artifact.
Yeah.
Um, there's another moment when you realize there's a prisoner in the dream that you're trying to let out. And then I think like one of the big moments you realize is the inhabitants are still alive inside the dream when you first interact with an inhabitant, and it's fucking terrifying. So that was one thing I wanted to mention with more context from watching the spoiler cast is um, one of the big reactions they found from playtesting is when people found the inhabitants in the dream, a lot of them wanted to go up to the creature and be like, "Hello, how are you? I've been learning all about you. How are you?" And then they got murdered,
Right.
and it like confused the fuck out of them. So basically,
Right.
you
So
know those
they
like,
added something to scare them.
so you know they went back because that's my reaction. Because the entire time in the base game, you're learning about the Harthians, and it's like as soon as you never meet a no, sorry, you're a Harthian. You don't meet the Nomai until like sort of the end of the game. But it's like I've learned so much about these people. I'd love to meet one of them. So it'd be really interesting to meet one of them. So like getting that opportunity to meet someone you've been learning so much about just through their environment and the records they've kept of their society, it's like, oh, that's really cool. Immediately I saw one of them and I was like, oh, cool. I'm gonna go up and talk to one of them. And immediately they like have these giant teeth and it looks like they're about to fucking eat you. And they blow out your candle. Where if your candle gets blown out in the dream, it sends you back outside of the
Oh,
dream.
okay. Right.
Which is pretty interesting. So they actually, like the photos of them
Yeah, the
outside
creepy
the dream.
photos that we keep seeing.
Those weren't that creepy, but they had to say to the art director, "Please, can you go back and make all of like the stuff in their houses really creepy because so many of the players are going up to them expecting them to be really friendly, and they're getting really confused when they're murdering them."
Yeah. You want to be like, yeah, I guess that you want to be like, they don't like outsiders sort of thing. It's like kind of what you want to
So
like believe,
basically,
right?
the core puzzle here is you're trying to figure out how to blow out. You figure out blowing out these candles unseals locks on the prisoner, and there's 3 locks. But you go in with the idea knowing that the way you do it is by figuring out the codes for these 3 locks. But as you go through the game and you figure out how to get to these locks, you realize these locks have been destroyed because
Oh, right.
okay, you realize these locks have been destroyed because they've like basically destroyed all of their records to stop people from learning about the eye and learning about um, how to unlock the prisoner because the prisoner is considered very dangerous because they don't want him to be let go. So they've
Yeah, they're
destroyed
just
all these
trying to.
records, but in the Forbidden
Yeah.
Archives, you discover not like the codes because that it subverts your expectations because you go in thinking you're going to figure out the codes, but what you actually figure out in the Forbidden Archives is there's actually glitches in the machine. You're in a virtual simulation and they've discovered glitches in their simulation, and you need to use these glitches in order to solve the final puzzle of the game. That was a big mind-blowing moment when it shows an image of you on the raft in the dream, and usually if you stepped off the raft in the dream into the water, it would blow out your candle and you would go back to the real world, right?
Yeah.
But it shows a image of someone going through the raft through a loading screen. There's these like caves you go through that are like loading screens, and somebody steps off the raft in the loading screen and he goes to this weird like world. And I remember looking at it and I was like, oh, that looks cool, but I won't actually be able to do that. I go in a raft through a loading screen, I walk off, and I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck is happening? The whole time I thought it was a dream, and then you realize it's a simulation, and it starts to blow your mind. The next one is you find one where if you put the artifact down and walk away from it, you start the simulate. You get too far away from your candle, it like anchors you into the simulation. If you put it down, you start to see all the code of the machine, like at the Matrix, and then you you need to use that to solve this puzzle where there's actually you can see the physical bridge out in the code, and then you use that to solve the puzzle combination to blow out this torch. And then the final glitch is like mechanically cool, and then also cool for the story as well, because you find out that if people die in the real world, they are still alive in the dream as long as their candle is lit. And then there's one of the final candles, there's bells next to it to protect it, because what they would do is to wake people up from the dream, they would use bell sounds to wake them up. One thing you find out is if you kill yourself as you enter the dream, your sort of like consciousness will be uploaded to the Matrix dream, but you won't be able to be woken up because you're already dead. But you don't care about dying because you have the Altered Time project. So you can kill yourself and you can walk past the alarm bells, and that allows you to finally let out the prisoner. And as you let out the prisoner, you realize the reason he was trapped in there, he shares his information through their scanning technology. You realize the reason the prisoner was kept in there this whole time was because he woke up from the dream and he wanted people to hear the echoes. He wanted people to hear the echoes of the eye because he was willing to let his species, his race, die to give birth to a whole new universe of possibilities. He was okay with death that meant the birth of a new universe sort of thing, which I think is really cool. And then there's this great moment where you're dead because you had to die to solve the puzzle. His body is already dead in the physical world, so he just shows this slideshow of the two of you just riding away down the river on a raft, and it's like, holy shit, it is so beautiful. Like every time I play the Outer Wilds, I'm just like in a status of deep existential thought, crying and repeating. It's just like that's my entire time playing the Outer Wilds. It's just like yeah, it's so good. Like the fact that this is a DLC and it's better than 90% of the games that came out this year is just a travesty for the video game industry.
I just should say that you couldn't vote for this in the Steam Awards because it's a DLC.
You can vote for games and demos that came out in 2021, but you cannot vote for DLCs for the Steam Awards.
There's no best DLC category, which maybe there should be.
Really fucking pissed me off because I was like, this is one of my front runners for Game of the Year, and I'm not allowed to vote for it. So it's like insane to me. But yeah, I really love the puzzle design again. Oh, so the more interesting stuff. So if you drop your candle and you go into like the Matrix world, the like Matrix view where you can see the code, if the inhabitants find you, obviously they can't blow out your candle. What they do is they just rip your fucking neck, and it's horrifying.
Right.
Yeah. Some other things, like there's a lab where you find like prototype artifacts, and if you take the prototype artifact into the dream, it blows you up. There's an achievement for that, which is pretty funny. I think I just did one loop for the footage, yeah. But yeah, that's Outer Wilds Echoes the Eye. I think that I'd say, with the Outer Wilds and the DLC, I would say try and go in completely blind if you can. If you're recommending it to a friend, I'd say at this point, because obviously this is massive spoilers. So you've already either spoiled the game for yourself
Yeah,
or
you're
you would be
fucked.
recommending
But
it to a friend. I would
yeah,
say recommend it to a friend, tell them to go in completely blind and only look something up if they get completely stuck. Try every
yeah,
possible avenue and then try and find spoilery free advice. I think like people recommend the Outer Wilds Reddit is quite good if you're like, I'm at this point and I'm not sure where to go. Do you have any advice or clues for me? I think there was one point in this DLC where there was a mechanic that I really needed to understand that I probably wouldn't been able to figure out myself, and I had to sort of look it up, sort of thing.
right.
And I think it was just one puzzle that was really, really like hard, but the rest of the game I could figure out by myself. So I would say like, if you're really stuck and you're like exhausting yourself just repeating loops over and over again, try and find like spoilery free advice to help you get through one mechanic and then go back to using that to help you get through the rest of the game. I only had to resort to that once, but I don't blame anyone if they like need extra help, because I think there is one mechanic in the game. I think specifically there's something, yeah, specifically you have to understand that the stuff that happens outside the dream affects stuff in the dream. Then you also need to understand that an action you do in one room in the dream affects something outside the dream once. And that was one thing I was like, that's kind of bullshit, and I wouldn't have been able to figure that out on my own, but it's like it's a key piece of information to figuring out like I think it's like figuring out one of the how to get to one of the hidden rooms or something so that you need to complete the game. So that was one, gripe I had with it. But overall, I love this DLC. I love the fact that that was one thing I was going to say. The Outsider is built to move away from the solar nova so they don't die. One thing they didn't account for was the solar nova actually affects the water in the stranger, which causes the dam to break. That puts out all their flames, so they die in the dream, which is something they didn't like account for. Which is yeah, because I don't know if they specifically knew it was gonna be a solar nova, or they just knew the world was gonna end, so they would get themselves out the way if it happened, sort of thing.
Yeah,
But
they didn't have all the
that's why
information,
the dam breaks, and I love the fact that the dam breaks at a certain point, and then you have to use that information to go into a certain campfire at a certain time so you can get to where you need to be. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many times I was playing this and I figured out something new and I went into it like, holy shit, mind blowing. I can go into this now and I have so much more to explore and I understand so much more about it. Highly recommend it to everyone, especially if you've played the base game. I'd recommend playing this after the base game and also completing this and then completing the original base game again, like doing the final loop again. It will actually, in the final base game, you basically talk to like the memories of all the races you've encountered. In the base game now with the DLC, there's a brand new inhabitant race there that you talk to and interact to now.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's extra like bonus content at the end for playing the DLC as well, which is really cool. Because there's a certain race in the base game that won't be there if you haven't interacted with that race. You can complete the game with never going to the Quantum Moon, which I did, but if you go to the Quantum Moon and you meet I think there's a Nomai there. If you meet that Nomai, then you will actually get to interact with them in the final campfire of the end of the universe. So pretty cool stuff. Highly recommend this. It Takes Two and Outer Wilds Against the Eye, front runners for Game of the Year, I have to say right now. So yeah, definitely check both these out and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.